Hello, folks. My name's Lee, and this is Kwan. We are here at the Regional Championships number 8, Modern in Sydney, Australia. We are going into round 2 with lots of players tonight.
Yeah, 155 players. We have a nice feature match here between Dimir, Murktide, and Boros Energy. So very keen to see this one play out.
Yeah, pretty excited. Let's go into it. Alrighty, on the left player here, we have...
we have Simon Gautherin on the left here, and he's on Dimir Murktide. And then on the right, we have Chris Campbell on Boros Energy. Some decks that I guess were a lot more popular in previous formats. I think they've lost a bit of meta share with those new cards from Ether Drift coming in, but definitely 2 decks that could potentially challenge some of these top popular meta decks that we expect to see later today.
Yeah. So looking at the meta as an overall, I'm not sure if you talked to this earlier, but what are the biggest decks you're seeing at the RC today?
Yeah, so definitely we'll get the official numbers shortly, but Breach definitely seems like the deck to beat. It's been very successful in Europe, in China, in America as well, and one that might potentially eat a ban. But the other decks would be Eldrazi and Black-White Sewers. These decks can potentially challenge some of these decks. I expect Dimir is quite good against... Dimir is quite good against the more combo-y deck of Breach. So we might be... they're both players might be relieved to see this matchup. And an old meta deck.
Alrighty, yeah. Well, exciting to see some of the top meta decks kind of straight into round 2 here at the RC. We have Chris here. Go ahead and do the very classic fetch, shock, straight into Gautherin.
Yeah, definitely a key component for this Boros deck. It's essentially a very strong Soul Warden back in the old days, but it'll give you 1 life and an energy, and you can pay 3 energy to pump up some of your smaller dudes as well. Yeah. So we'll see what Simon responds with.
Right. Seems like Simon just played the land and fetched. But is it a big deal that Chris here being on the play being the aggro deck here? Ooh.
Yeah, so this Ocelot Pride is very strong with Guided Souls. They synergize very well. So Guided Souls will trigger when Ocelot Pride enters the battlefield, and then end of turn Ocelot Pride will trigger and make a cat token. And when you get to 10 permanents, you'll make an additional copy of each token you've made. So a very strong pair of cards. We'll see if Simon has an answer for either of those.
Yeah, somewhat say it's Splinter Twin in Boros Energy, but it is a very, very strong play. And yeah, eventually the City's Blessing will enable Ocelot Pride to go extremely wide. And I think what is Simon's plan here? What do you think Simon's trying to think about once he sees the 2 combos of 2 of the strongest decks in the whole entire deck here?
Definitely, he wants to get rid of some of these cards before they get a bit out of hand. His removal suite is a bit more single target based. You can see Fatal Push is in his deck list, so he'll be wanting to utilize Fatal Push on some of these things. And speaking of which...
Yeah, there you go. Well, very timely Fatal Push there on that cat, because you don't want to let the main step, the end step come out around.
Yeah, he's prevented that token coming in, so very timely from him. Another thing to, as you might be able to see from Chris's hand, he has a few of that the burn spell, the energy-based burn spell Galvanic Discharge. That works very well with Guided Souls. Guided Souls, every time you play a creature, you get some more energy, so you can pump it up and potentially kill one of the larger creatures from the Murktide deck.
That's right, yeah. All right, well, Simon here playing his Dimir Murktide. And, very classic. All right, we've got the signature card in the whole deck here. We have a Psychic Frog, a new addition from one of the most powerful sets.
Definitely a very strong card that synergizes very well with Murktide Regent, the namesake of the deck. But yeah, the Psychic Frog definitely pivoted the deck from a blue-red shell to a blue-black shell. So very, very strong tempo card. Whenever it swings, it deals damage, and then you draw a card as well. So very strong for putting pressure on. It grows, it gains flying when you exile cards from your graveyard. So a very elusive threat as well.
Yeah, I do love that Simon here is able to play a good, clean frog on turn 2. And the Boros player here is essentially just trying to... I think he's an end-step surveyor here.
Yep. Yeah, setting up and seeing what he can potentially synergize with for his next turn.
Yeah, I think the really crazy powerful thing that these Boros Energy decks have is that they're not only just an aggro deck, right? They kind of have the reach. Like, what are some of the cards that give them the reach that makes them so powerful?
Yeah, these new age aggro decks definitely have a few tools. I think a card that will be quite strong in this matchup is Goblin Bombardment. You can sort of sacrifice a lot of these tokens that you'd make with, your Ajani or your Ocelot Pride, and then sort of just shoot things down. In terms of Chris's deck, he's got Seasoned Pyromancer, which can gain a bit of card advantage. He's got Fable of the Mirror Breaker, an old old friend. And then Showdown of the Skulls, a card from Kaldheim that will generate quite a lot of card advantage.
All right. So we have a Galvanic Discharge here, targeting the frog, I assume. Yeah, what's the kind of the really nice interaction with Galvanic Discharge?
Yeah, Galvanic Discharge is a very powerful card. You know, it's a sort of a stronger version of Harness Lightning, if you remember back in the day. But the nuance of this card is that you sort of have the advantage. So if Simon chooses not to discard any cards, it will just deal the 2 damage and you'll gain an energy. But if Simon decides to pitch his entire hand, you can choose not to use any energy. So you can just gain 3 energy. So it's worded in a way that's very beneficial to Boros. So now Simon's sort of under the pump, sort of deciding should he go all in or should he just let this die? Because it is a very powerful threat in this tempo deck. But it's kind of that game of chicken between the Discharge and the Frog.
And that's what it feels like these days with the type of new cards that are coming out with the Modern Horizon set, is that it gives the players so many options, right? And also the Guide of Souls being very synergistic with that, making that spell much stronger than it is. All right, so it seems like Psychic Frog has been killed. Oh, another Ocelot Pride has followed up.
Yeah, definitely what Chris wants to be seeing. Now he'll sort of have that engine going on. He'll start to make, I believe he has a stack of cat tokens. So those will start getting pumped out with this sort of synergy as well. So because he's gained the life from that Guide Assault, it's going to trigger the Ocelot Pride end of turn.
All right, so back to Simon here. Seems like, we're putting a bit of pressure. It's kind of crazy. This is an aggro deck, and they have life gain.
Yeah, it's these decks are very strong, and they have a bit of end game now as well. So it's sort of that really all these strong, powerful cards from Modern Horizons 3, and they synergize very well.
Alrighty, so a bit of cantripping here from Simon. He's obviously just doing the classic blue-black thing, carving his hand, trying to get there, and he's passed the turn. Oh, okay, so he's like Simon has missed the land drop. But he's got a lot of ways to try to deal with this, though. Yeah,
luckily it hasn't run out of control just yet. I mean, it's just a few damage at this point. Another key thing to note is at the end step, Ocelot Pride should be able to generate the cat token, and then they'll create another life and another energy as well. So just additional energy that keeps helping.
Oh, we have a Flage here from Chris. Flage is another way that Boros Energy can have their reach.
Definitely, it's not as detrimental to the board, just because, doing the 3 damage to face isn't as bad. You're not losing a creature or anything.
Wow. Very aggressive removal there. So what Simon's going to do is, in response to Flage, he's going to go ahead and kill that Guide of Souls, so the extra energy in the life gains when it's come in. And then Simon's going to go down to 8.
Yeah, luckily these cats aren't too big, but definitely they are putting the pressure on, and maybe that's potentially a downside of Dismember, maybe aimed at some other cards like Ketramos, but definitely one you have to utilize to get rid of that more troublesome Guide of Souls.
Yeah, right. These cats are very cute. I love the tokens.
I think each player has some very nice tokens.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I think Ocelot Pride, when I first noticed this card in the set, was that I was just like, this is the definition of a 1-drop that really blows out of control.
Definitely, yeah. If left unchecked, these things definitely run away with the game. You can see, he's got a few tokens now, and now Goblin Bombardment, so he can potentially fling those at Simon.
We have a Bowmaster here. Perfect.
Yeah, they'll be very timely, or should be able to get rid of the Pride and at least provide a blocker so, he can preserve his life total. He does still look like he's stranded on lands a bit, but hopefully should be able to at least protect his life. And fortunately, Chris doesn't have that 4th mana for Flage, which could be a potential thing that Simon will hold up Counterspell for next turn, just to avoid the big 6/6 laney Helixing Titan.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the Titan comes with the haste, right?
Yeah, it's very problematic to deal with.
All right. Okay, so he's gone ahead and Galvanic here. So Campbell is down to a couple cards left, but that Galvanic Discharge again is going to probably take care of that Bowmaster, and he's really putting on the pressure, isn't he?
Yeah, definitely. And remember, as you mentioned earlier, like he does still have Flage, so when he draws a land, so it won't necessarily be a dead draw. He'll have a Titan coming in. So the pressure is a bit on Simon. Hopefully he can draw that land and sort of maybe come back there. But yeah, so he's facing, just a cat token now and potentially a Flage later.
Yeah, right. But yeah, Chris is missing that 4th land, so he needs that 4th land. And all right, we've got a massive Murktide coming in.
Yeah, we'll see how many cards he exiles. He definitely has cast a few. So I think it's 3 spells. So yeah, it should be a 6/6. So we'll see what else Chris has here.
Simon missing another land drop. But he does have a big blocker, which is something to do to block this token, put chipping in damage. But I think sometimes the Murktide players do play like this. They just turn into a control deck.
Essentially, yeah. Some matchups you sort of you change from either the aggro deck or the control deck. In this matchup, I imagine he would take that more control approach. I think the benefit of, I guess, not having that land would mean that he has a lot of spells in his hand, so potentially be able to get rid of some of this.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think also being on the play there as the aggro deck, you get to get those first times, get those chips in, right?
Very, very good. Yeah, definitely a format where you want to be on the play.
Alrighty. So back to Simon here. We see a Ranger Captain EOS, fetching up a Guide of Souls. But it seems like the whole deck is just made up of the same cards.
Yeah, pretty much. They're all very synergistic. Yeah, fortunate Simon has sort of, I guess, stopped the bleeding, and he's now been able to, I guess,
All right, is that a counterspell? Is it a counterspell? Yeah. Counterspell on the second Ranger EOS.
Yeah, so Simon's sort of stabilized a little bit here. Obviously, he'd like to be on a little bit more life, but he does have that blocker, and he isn't facing a Flage just yet. So I think he's happy to see this board state. That Goblin Bombardment, given the low life total of Simon, could come in very handily. So any smaller creatures that come on later down could potentially represent lethal with that bombardment.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, gladly, Simon has 3 lands. Chris is stuck on 3, so the pressure is slowed down a little bit, but he does have some targets.
Yep.
All right, 4th land there for Simon, which is great. Chris here is, using... Oh, he's got his 4th land as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be timely for him. I think he'll look to escape that Flage, and we'll see if Simon has a response for that.
This Murktide, he's on blocking duty. He's
Yeah, unfortunately, Simon's on such a low life total. He has to sort of, hopefully get a second sort of Murktide or another threat down, so he can start attacking. But at the moment, all on defense.
Oh, that's is that the new basic from the new set?
Yeah, one of those gold ones. Very nice from
gold foil.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I love it. There's actually a secret mode here, if you didn't know, where you can actually just sack the Ranger to stop the opponent from casting counterspell, right?
Yeah, definitely an option that's available. I think Chris is holding that for a potential later move. He does have enough cards in his graveyard to keep using Flage. I believe at least one more time.
Yep.
But it doesn't look like Simon's got enough to answer perhaps the second Flage. So it looks like it's going on to game 2.
Yeah, right. Yeah, looking at sideboards here, the game definitely changes significantly after game 1 and 2, right?
Definitely. Simon has a few goodies that he can bring in potentially. I think first and foremost, he has 3 Stone Scaldings in his sideboard, so those will definitely come in. It counters a lot of the deck, especially those early threats that come in. He has potential to bring in Harbinger of the Seas. Now, that's a card that's seeing, because Chris doesn't have any, blue cards in his deck, it could nullify a lot of his lands and force him to find some basics. He will see the Harbinger in his sideboard, so he might have to respect it and find some basics earlier on. And then another card that potentially could come in would be Toxic Deluge to sort of clear the board of those troublesome cats.
3 for 1, right?
Yeah. And then a few other cards potentially, depending on Simon's respect for Flage, Nile Spellbomb and Surgical Extraction, just to get rid of it. It is a very problematic card for Simon. It keeps coming back. It's a bit of a pain for Simon to deal with. Yeah,
especially in the blue-black sort of archetype, right? Nuking the graveyard is one thing, and you also get a bit of card advantage out of the spell bomb. But you can generally do a lot of like 3 for 1s or 2 for 1s, especially with the type of the deck that he set up for.
Most definitely. And in terms of what Chris is looking at, his main deck is quite good. I feel like he might bring in another Showdown just potentially to get some more value out. You could see he was more the aggressor in this matchup and trying to get a bit more value down. But overall, I'd say he's pretty happy with his main deck. Potential to bring in an Orum's Chant just to stop any counter spells and whatnot. But definitely a matchup that used to be quite good for Boros. So we'll see. I think Simon will definitely have a few more answers, but we'll see what they bring in.
Yeah. And definitely, as viewers watching, this RC is the open deck list. So the opponents get to see the whole entire sideboard and the main deck at the start of game 1, and they get to double check and see it again game 2 and 3. So it definitely changed the type of deck, because when you play on your weeklies, you are just thinking about like what could they bring in. While this is a competitive regional championships here in Sydney, Australia, they can see everything transparently.
Yeah, it's nice. I think we can see with Chris's sideboard, he's probably tuned against some of the other decks. Maybe Dimir Murktide wasn't a deck that he was expecting to see, perhaps a bit less popular. Yeah, he definitely has some answers for some of these artifact decks. It looks like in his sideboard with some Sony Silencers, some Wear Tears, March. It looks like it's mainly for those black-white, Breach, maybe Eldrazi decks. So perhaps Simon could slip under the radar here with sideboarding. But yeah, we'll see how this second game goes.
Perfect. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, like, there is a lot of breach in the room today. There is a lot of black-white today. A lot of people just casting lots of spells.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, I think walking around, I definitely saw a lot of breach players comboing off. But yeah, so it's good to see some different magic.
Yeah, definitely. It's a nice, healthy room today, though. There's lots of people playing lots of fun magic. Alrighty. In the game 2 here, Simon definitely will most likely be on the play here. And all right, seems like Chris is going to mulligan.
Yeah, Simon looks like he's contemplating his hand. I think I saw a Dismember, a Murktide. So it looks like he had a mix of creatures, spells, and lands, which generally quite good for the tempo deck. You definitely want a few removal spells to deal with these problematic cards that we saw in game 1 from Boros. You know, your Ocelot Prize, your potential Ajanis, and Guida Souls. So I think Chris will undoubtedly be looking for some of those, while Simon will be trying to get rid of them.
Yeah, the awkward thing about, like, what are your thoughts about Dismember? Because, like, yes, it's a great premium removal spell, -5/-5, but you lose 4 life.
Yeah, definitely. I feel Simon maybe wasn't expecting to see as much Boros. Definitely Boros is a deck that can punish you for being on such low life. But again, some of these other decks may be less taxing on the life. We're seeing a lot of decks fetch, shock, Thoughtseize, so, you know, starting on 15 like the old days.
Yeah.
But Boros is a deck that can capitalize on that, you know, Goblin Bombardment to finish that last points of damage, and Flage to also finish the job as well directly. So unfortunately, I think Simon has to play them because, you know, dismembering a turn 1 Guide of Souls can prevent a lot of future damage, a lot of future advantage. But I think he's certainly wishing he had another removal spell for this specific matchup.
I mean, he can technically still pay for it. It's black.
Definitely.
I think it's got, like, it's still good, because I know sometimes you see those colorless lists playing Dismember, and they just, like, always pay 4 life all the time.
Necessary evil. I think it costs you 4 life, but it'll prevent you. It'll save you a lot more life down the line.
Alrighty. All right, so Simon has did the classic shock Watery Grave pass.
Yeah, it means he probably has something, either a removal spell or potentially a cantrip as well.
Oh, I've never seen this card. Is this a Ragavan?
An old friend, and it meets its end immediately. Everyone, I think, knows how good that card is.
Yeah, banned in a few formats.
Definitely.
Oh, wow. So we've got a turn 1 Fatal Push, turn 2 into Psychic Frog.
Yeah, definitely the start that Simon's looking for. Very good tempo. He's gotten rid of the threat, any potential threat, and he's landed a threat now that Chris has to deal with promptly. Otherwise, it might run away with the game.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, they both had pretty powerful starts. You know, holding up removal, you know, fetching and shocking, though, a little tricky. But he also had to shock the sink to play these new, they call them Bolt Lands, right?
Yeah, they're very strong, very utility strong. So late in the game, they can function as a sort of counter or bounce of permanent. So very good. A bit unfortunate that he drew it in his first 2 cards, but yeah, no, it's definitely, it does the job as a land.
Yeah, we have an Ajani here. Germany bringing a friend, another cat token, another, like, powerful threat. They have a lot of powerful threats in this deck.
Yeah, these Modern Horizon cards doing quite a bit of work. Ajani definitely one that can flip, especially with Pride as well. So not just with the token that Ajani makes, but also with the Ocelot Pride as well. So it's quite a lot of, you know, a bit of a cat sub-theme to this deck. And the flip side is very powerful.
Yes, his cat being a 2/1, gonna get killed by the Bowmaster. You know, it sounds like a main phase, right? Oh no, end step.
Yeah, so he's actually gonna force Chris, he's gonna let Chris have the option to flip it. He's gonna decline there because Psychic Frog, if it does damage to a Planeswalker as well, it would also draw a card. So he's decided against flipping it and wants to flip it on his own terms, I suppose.
Oh, that's I guess that's a really heads-up play from there. He killed the cat.
Yep.
And then see if he wants to flip, giving Simon more information, and then make the opponent decide.
Yeah, it seems like he must have something else, and it looks like he's got another Ajani, so he's going to be able to flip that.
Could you explain the synergy there? What happened?
Yeah, so basically, when Ajani says whenever another cat dies, it's going to flip into that Planeswalker version, and because Ajani, legend rules, so it's going to die to itself. It's going to generate a cat, and it's going to have some abilities to utilize.
Yeah, because you can't have two of the same legendary creatures in play. So then, yeah, he dies.
Yeah, using sort of the game rules to sort of help there.
Yep.
He's just generated another potential blocker.
Yep. All right. So Chris here has been able to get some tokens here. We have the Frog and the Bowmaster. Not much drawing. Like Bowmaster's mostly for the decks that like to draw cards, right?
Yeah, most definitely. I think he's looking at those Ketramos decks that draw quite a lot of cards, and that should be able to grow the Bowmaster quite quickly. I think in this deck it functions as a sort of a gut shot of some sorts and gets rid of some of the more problematic creatures. If Chris is able to draw more cards, Bowmaster is potentially able to punish the board state a bit. But at the moment, it is essentially just a 1/1 or raise the alarm with a bit of a gut shot ETB.
Alrighty. Yeah, so...
I think Simon's contemplating a potential attack.
Yeah, he's pitched the Murktide to make the Dimir Psychic Frog to give it a +1/+1 counter, which you have to try to buff it up before you attack into these cats, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, what he's done here is he's discarded 2 cards to it, made it 3 power, and he's going to give it flying to avoid these cat tokens.
It's 4 power now, right?
I think he had 1 card in his graveyard before.
No, but it starts as, he has a push. He's discard 2 cards. It becomes a 2/3, a 4/3, right? A 4/5. Yeah, he discarded a Murktide.
Yep. But yes, he's dealt with the Ajani, which was creating a bit of problem. But
another. Wait, is it a third Ajani?
Yeah, it's a very powerful card.
More cat tokens.
Yeah, so he'll have some ground creatures. It looks like Simon doesn't have enough cards in his graveyard to, I guess, keep giving the frog flying. So he can throw these cat tokens sort of under the bus, essentially. Right. Or he is going on the, the offensive here.
Yeah, right. Cat tokens are flying in. Yeah, another third Ajani. Very powerful card. Just making it feels like a tokens deck at this point.
Yeah, they're definitely. I think Chris has brought a stack of tokens with him based on how many cats through Ocelot Pride and Johnny he has to make. Yeah,
I have noticed both players are kind of stuck on 2 lands though.
Yeah, that's sort of the problem with these maybe more aggressive decks. They're a bit lighter on lands, so sometimes they can miss on that 3rd land. Although it does mean that their hand is full of spells, so if they do draw that 3rd land, they are quite well positioned.
These cats are 2/1s, and I think Simon's looking to potentially just block 1 of each.
Yeah, I think he's happy to, Orcish Bowmaster has done its job there, so he's just preserving some life total, so he doesn't want to go down to that more potential lethal, that red area for his life total. And now he is able to flip that new Ajani as well.
Yeah, it's a really interesting play because obviously we saw the Goblin Bombardment. Oh, wow, okay. Oh, wow. Okay, that's the concession. So it seems like Ajani was trying to buff the token. Is that correct?
Yeah, so he's trying to make it a 3/2, a bit more of a formidable blocker. But Simon had another Bowmasters, got rid of it, and he left his Ajani wide open. And he would have lost quite a lot of tempo. He would have lost the Ajani and then potentially just been open with his life total as well. So, very strong play from Simon. And his cards lined up quite well into those, those cats.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no. Interesting scoop though. But I guess sometimes if you don't have nothing in your hand.
Yeah, so I guess the potential downside of these aggro decks is, you might not have enough gas to keep up with these tempo decks. And if you lose what you have on board, that might be a sign that things aren't going too well. And that looked like that was the case when those cats got cleared from the board.
Yeah, right. Nice. All right. I'm loving the playmats today as well. It's so great. Look at it, you got little animals and you got a little volcano. Is that Valakut, maybe?
Yeah, it must be one of those new secret lair arts. Yeah, it's definitely a lot more fancy artworks.
All right, sorry. Back to the magic here. So, I'm expecting. I haven't seen any of the Deluges. I haven't seen Stern Scoldings from Simon yet, which I'm excited to see because when you're on the draw, because obviously the Chris is going to be on the play next turn.
Yep.
It's just really nice to be at a reactive, right? Just to keep the board clear and keep it going.
Most definitely, yeah. Stone Scolding, so I think Simon here has Spell Snare in the main, which is very good in this matchup because Boros has a lot of 2-drops and you are getting a lot of tempo. You're using 1 mana to get rid of 2 of theirs and 1 of their cards. And Stone Scolding represents, a few extra copies of that, especially in this matchup. I think any potential Ajanis on turn 2 by Chris can be countered by just a 1 mana blue spell, and then he's able to go on the aggressive by playing a threat on his turn 2.
Yeah.
I think he'll Simon will definitely be looking for a hand with Spell Snare or Stern Scolding or some Fatal Pushes. And yeah, and maybe quell the faster start from Chris.
Yeah, right. Because like I think the axis that the Dimir player would mostly be doing is that they either want to control then tempo in to a win, while the Chris is here with the Boros. He's either Boros aggro or he's going to go into a mid range. So can you explain some of these terms to us?
Yeah, so I think with Chris, he'll hope to land a few threats earlier on and pressure the life total a lot. But he can also pivot to mid-range value deck because of cards like Flayed, that represent a 6/6 Titan, and the Dejani flipping to become a potential Planeswalker as well and buffer up that board state. So I think Chris is looking to expand the board, whereas Simon is hoping to get rid of a lot of those things so they don't represent a problem for him.
Yeah, it's so funny though, because looking at the sideboard of Chris here, things like you said earlier, right? And he has teched his sideboard a lot against what's popular in the meta, right? You got like Breach, you got a lot of Tron, Eldrazi and stuff. And then looking at the Dimir Murktide list as well, I feel like a lot of the tech is versus like the aggro decks.
Yeah, they've they've attacked the meta in very different ways. I think through counter spells, they're very good against other meta decks, whereas Boros, because they're more aggressive, they're able to pressure these other combo decks and put pressure on them, and then also just slow them down so that you have enough time to finish the job essentially.
Alrighty. And yeah, we did have a little walk around the room, trying to scout out any interesting or fun decks. Did you see any interesting fun stuff?
We had one on camera actually. The Mill versus Hollow one. That was a very explosive match. I think there's a few other spicy decks, but we'll see how they go. But yeah, definitely a lot of Breach.
I mean, we're excited though. Yeah. All right, so Chris here is going to do the classic shock into Skyder Souls again.
Yeah, so, a key cog into this Boros deck. It looks like it's going unanswered, so it could potentially lead to some strong plays from Chris to follow up with.
Unanswered for now.
Yes.
Because he's only played a spell. I think most of Simon's deck is all instant speed anyway. He'll take one here. A Johnny, fetch and response.
Yeah. And that's met that spell snare. So see, now Simon has a bit of advantage here. He's, Chris has spent his turn casting a Johnny, and this is still Simon's first turn, and he's used that spell snare there. So now he's able to untap and see, surveil what he wants to see. Does he want to get rid of the Guide of Souls? Does he have something else to play his own threat and, potentially outmuscle that Guide of Souls?
Yeah, I didn't know Time Walk was 1 mana.
Essentially.
Alrighty, so Simon here, I think he's definitely playing the control matchup here. He's definitely just land pass. Is this something you do on it often?
I do like the Dimir Murktide deck. I think it's okay for him here. He sort of, because you have a few counter spells, you can sort of pick and choose what you want to, fight against.
Okay, so we have a second Guide of Souls here from Chris, and yeah, definitely thinking about a response here. Yeah. Chris is also hitting all his lands. That's great.
Yeah. So I think, a Guide of Souls by itself isn't too problematic. It's when, there's another creature, it starts generating value. 2 Guide of Souls, a bit more problematic. Any creature that comes in is essentially 2 counter, 2 energy and 2 life. But again, it's not too problematic just yet.
Right. The crazy thing about Guide of Souls is that you can see it actually triggers on any creature. Yeah, so like basically, it's not even just non-tokens. It's any creature that enters. So all the cats also giving them energy, giving them life.
Most definitely. And that can kind of spiral out of control with all these tokens that this deck generates. So it's utilized a lot of tokens and a lot of synergy there.
So we have a surgical extraction here.
Yeah, it looks like it's targeting Fatal Push, which is a key card for Simon in this matchup. Getting rid of a lot of the cards in the deck. So this will be a good one to get rid of. Potentially any cards. The other good thing about Surgical is that you can see what Simon's holding in his hand. What are we seeing from Simon's hand?
We see a Counterspell, a Bowmaster, a Spell Bomb, and a Consider.
Yeah, I feel like he'll fire off that Consider end of turn. It does look like he brought in that Null spell, but he does really respect that Flage. Bowmasters as a potential is a bit awkward here because the Guide of Souls, he's 2 power. He's probably using that to try to snipe down some of those cats. And then, he's holding up Counterspell to, answer any more problematic threats.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the extra advantage that you get from Surgical because you get to look through the whole deck. It is game 3 though, so it doesn't really matter about sideboarding, but they're going to be able to get some extra intel, extra information. Also, seeing the hand is so clutch, so important.
Yeah, you can sort of play around. I think now that Chris won't play his one power thing straight into it, so you can definitely play around a few options. I feel like Simon will probably play a consider and turn, try and find that land and sort of be okay from that point. But yeah, we'll see what else Chris has.
Yeah, right. Being able to see Simon's hand out in the open here because of the, surgical extraction. I personally think his hand's great. Like, I think, he's got a lot of interaction.
Yeah, he's in a good spot. He would ideally like another land. But yeah, we'll see. He's kept the card on top, so it must be something he likes.
Fantastic, yeah. But yeah, snagging those fatal pushes, that's, one of the strongest cards in his deck. So
yeah, so you won't be seeing that off the top, unfortunately.
All right, Surveil land for Simon. He's going to go ahead and, tuck a bolt land. Discharge targeting his own creature.
Interesting. Yeah, so I think he's using this just to essentially buffer up his Guided Souls. Because Guided Souls has that second line of text where, if you spend 3 energy, it'll give it a flying counter and it'll pump it up a little bit too. So, these discharges aren't doing too much in Chris's hand. So he's sort of using it as an energy generation there.
Yeah, so Guided Soul is going to be able to get some flying and sort of make it stronger, right?
Yeah, it'd become a 2/3 flyer, a 3/4 flyer, which would definitely accelerate the clock from a 1/2 that's attacking at the moment. And given that he knows what's in Simon's hand, he knows that he doesn't have a good way to deal with it, and he doesn't have the fatal bushes in his deck anymore. So this could be a threat that sort of grows quite quickly.
He is committing a lot to this one Guided Souls, though.
yeah, definitely. I think because he knows the coast is clear, he's more okay to do that. I think he's only got one card that he doesn't know in Simon's hand, which would have been the card he drew off Consider. So he's concluded that that's good enough.
Gotcha, yeah. So, yeah, Thraben Charm is actually really powerful here because I think it can exile target graveyard, right?
Yeah, it's got a few modes, and it's very strong with a strong token battlefield. When you have a lot of tokens, you can kill quite a large creature too. You can kill an enchantment and exile a graveyard, which is very good at stopping that Murktide from coming down. The big Murktide.
Wow, Guided Souls just powering itself.
So it's representing 3 damage a turn now, so it's really increased the clock a bit. So I think it'll be 4 turn. It's now a 4-turn clock as opposed to a 12-turn clock as it was before or whatnot.
Interesting that Simon did want to just jump block it. All right, so we see a Galvanic Discharge on the Bowmaster here, and the Bowmaster has been taken down, and now we just have a 1/1 token.
Yeah, so Chris is out of cards in hand, so he is committed to this Guided Souls. I think he might find a Surveil land in a turn and try and manipulate that the top of his draw. So Simon has a few cards in hand, but they do line up a bit awkwardly against Guided Souls, and and amongst them it can't be Fatal Push because they're surgical.
Yeah, right. And Guided Souls has flying now, right? Is that correct?
Yeah. So it hops over those that army token. So I guess they're just trading blows now.
Right. We have a Spell Bomb, potentially just trying to get some card advantage here.
Yeah, and it'll stop any flage, so it might stop that as a potential top deck. I think he's waiting to see what gets surveilled from Chris here, and then before eating that graveyard. But he is also holding that counterspell, so he sort of has control over what Chris plays or has to play around as well.
I guess getting all the information is always the best route, right?
So yeah, we're seeing a bit of they're racing different things here. So Chris is definitely pressuring the life total, whereas Simon has a bit more control. He just needs to get rid of that Guided Souls, and then he's humming along nicely.
Right. Okay. Surveil Lens has definitely changed the landscape of Magic, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's helped a lot in a lot of formats, and it definitely helps manipulate that top of the deck. It really helps you, choose what you want to draw.
It's like half a card. Alrighty. So what do you think Chris is trying to look for here?
Chris does have the advantage here with that Guided Souls. I think ideally, some of these value cards like Ranger Captain of Eos, which represents 2 cards, that Showdown of Scalds, Fable, the Mirror Breaker, Season, Pyromancer, those cards that generate, more card advantage would be beneficial here. Although, given the board state, a card like Ragavan off the top also isn't too bad. You can sort of dash that in and, potentially generate some advantage. But I think Chris is sort of also knows that Simon's holding a counterspell, so he might be he might hold something and try and play two things at once, so he can't get, so both of them don't get countered.
Right, right. See a Psychic Frog here coming out of Simon. A kind of nice thing, if it's anything urgent, he can actually just give it flying and block.
Yeah, so it's a potential, I guess, avenue to block that Gardasol's has increased. Chris utilized the remainder of his energy counters to make it now a much bigger threat. So it looks like it's a 5/6 now with flying. So maybe his own imitation of Murktide. But yeah, so Simon luckily has the option that he can potentially chump it if he needs to. But he'll probably surveil what Chris has and then make it that business decision, I suppose.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, Chris at least is pretty clear from escaping a flage, but, yeah, he's going all in on this Guide of Souls. Simon's taking it. All right, he's gone down to 2.
Yeah, I think Simon is happy to deal with maybe the remainder of what.
A flage. That's a flage. I think he has to counterspell this.
Yeah, luckily he did utilize that Null Spellbomb earlier, so that graveyard is empty, so he has a few turns before that flage becomes active, or I guess escaped. But yeah, he is facing down a potential lethal Guide of Souls, so he might have to utilize that Psychic Frog as a blocker, which isn't its natural, I guess, function.
But yeah, sometimes you got to do what you got to do, right? Oh, okay, Okay, I think he's trying to commit in the sense that maybe he has another way to deal with the God of Souls, or maybe he's just trying to see what will I draw.
Yeah, I mean, the frog definitely draws a card, so there's potential to see something else.
Yep.
He's getting rid of cards like Stern Scaldings because they're not too useful right now. He's hoping to draw an answer to this Guide of Souls.
I think he's drawn an Otawara. I'm just guessing. I think I saw Otawara. Does he play Otawara? No Otawara.
Don't look like it, but the deck definitely has a few answers.
Subtlety. Subtlety has flying.
Yeah, that's a potential blocker. Not its traditional use, but definitely will buy him a turn. And, next turn, if he is able to untap and attack again, he could draw another card along with his draw step, so he's drawing more cards.
Yeah, right. That was a really, heads-up risky play. I wasn't expecting him to just fly out the blocker.
Yeah, I guess sometimes you have to in order to avoid that, and it looks like it's paid off quite well for him. So he does have the sort of tempo here, and he's sort of leaving that Guide of Souls to block any Psychic Frog.
Alrighty. Alright, so we've got Subtlety coming in.
Yeah, and it's really fended off that the pressure that Simon was facing. Now that Simon has a few cards in hand, he's sort of able to look at the board set and decide what he wants to do. See, now that there's a bit of a game of chicken here with the Psychic Frog and the God of Souls.
Right. God of Souls is just... Alright, now God of Souls is in blocking duty. Alrighty.
It looks like Simon didn't have anything else. He needed to get through with that frog to hopefully draw an answer, but it looks like that surgical was quite the important answer to that.
Yeah, no. Well, congrats to Chris there. Definitely getting on the God of Souls and surgical, seeing the answers has really turned the corner for him.
Yeah, it looks like his sideboard for the other decks in the meta have also helped against Dimir Murktide, and going all in on Cavan. All in on Guide of Souls. We're seeing how strong that card is, and hopefully it'll help him against the other decks he expects to see today. All
right, we'll bring it back to the booth and do a little bit of analysis. Yep. Hello, everyone. Yes, we just saw round 2 of the Modern RC. You were watching the Regional Championships in Sydney, Australia. Yeah, that was a great kind of back and forth match between Dimir Murktide and Boros Energy.
Yeah, some of the all-stars from Modern Horizons 3, Psychic Frog, and then Guide of Souls, Flage as well. Looked like Boros had the advantage there. And plenty of magic to come.
Yeah, lots of magic. How many rounds? It's 8 rounds today, right?
Yeah, it'll be a long day for the players.
Yeah.
And we expect to see a few more meta decks coming up.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, but it's just good to get all the diverse decks out, get interesting picks and stuff. But yeah, apart from that, more coming, more rounds of Magic, and we'll see you soon. And hope to tune in soon.
Amen.